Hello there guys and welcome to Mad Doc Minis. In this video I'm going to be changing the Storm Speeder into something that I don't mind looking at. The Storm Speeder is okay in my view, but there's a couple of things that kind of irk me about it. There's just too much going on and it's trying to be a tank a little bit too much for my liking. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to strip the thing down. I'm basically going to hot rod the thing. But I kind of start off with seeing what I get in the box here. I really like these new transfer sheets, by the way. I think they've done a good job with those, but that goes to one side for the minute. And I just have a little bit of a look at the instructions and the components to see what I've got going on, not having built one before. I decided quite early on that I wanted to get rid of the repulsor plates from this vehicle. They're just too bulky and there's too much similarity with the ground vehicles from the Primaris range for my liking. So I took these components and trimmed down the supporting rods off of them because I'm not going to need them and they're adding extra bulk and sticky out detail that I don't want. I then glued the components where they're supposed to go on the side of the fuselage. I do a little bit more of these later on in the build, so stay tuned for that. Similarly, I took the supporting rods off of the bottom of the fuselage as well. Once again, they're not going to be needed and they're adding extra detail and bulk that I don't require. I didn't worry too much about being tidy with those because you're not really going to see what's going on underneath. I then glued the fuselage components together, but I did omit these things. I didn't like the exhaust pipes or those funny kind of guards that go around the engines, so I got rid of those, but I did keep the handles on the back of the vehicle because they don't really offend me at all. I then decided to get rid of the bull bars off the front of the vehicle. I just think they're a little out of place on a skimmer, and I know they're trying to tie this vehicle in with the other vehicles from the Primaris range, but they just don't really work here for me. So I got rid of them almost entirely. I trimmed down the small component that's supposed to go on top of the bull bars and then glued that directly to the area that I just trimmed down. So I've got a much stubbier version, if you will, of a bull bar at the front here, but I think it's more subtle and more in keeping with a skimmer, and I was really happy with how this bit turned out. The next thing to get the axe was the stupid turret mounts on the side. I really don't like their use on this particular vehicle. It just adds extra bulk and it takes away from the swooshability factor, if you can use that terminology with Space Marine flyers. So I trimmed that all back and then I cut a small disc from cardstock and placed that in the recess just to cover up the scarred hole that was created there. I did end up doing something a bit different in the end, so stay tuned for that, but at this stage that's what I did. There are small holes on the back of the fuselage here where the exhaust pipes normally go, so I decided to use these small little Lego circular tiles just to hide those, and that was an easy fix. At this stage, I returned to these components underneath the fuselage here, which I had already trimmed back, and decided to trim them back a little bit further. I really wanted them to look like they had some kind of function because you can kind of see them from the side on the vehicle. They're not completely hidden. So I drilled small holes into the center of each section to simulate some kind of maneuvering jet, and I'm glad I took the time to do this because they now look like they do something useful. I was now at a pivotal stage in the build. I put the turret on the back of the vehicle and realised that I didn't like it. And I wasn't expecting to feel that way, but it's pretty bulky. There's an unnecessary third crew member up there. And when that little turret is removed, there is a much nicer side profile to this vehicle. So I decided to dispense with it. And I know some of you are going to be screaming at the screen, but I ripped off the rocket launchers off of that turret, which I'd already built up, and reattached them onto the wingtips. This worked quite well because it gave the illusion of the wings being a little bit longer, and it also added to that wonderful flatter profile that just gives the impression of speed and maneuverability. So it was a really important factor in this build, and I think it just transformed this vehicle, at least for me personally. I realised that I wasn't entirely happy with this area on the side of the vehicle, so I decided to cover it up completely with a larger piece of cardstock cut to look like an armoured plate. It's a bit rough and ready. You may want to use plasticard if you were doing something similar, but it worked out well enough for me. For the Hailstrike version of the Storm Speeder, I took the Thunderstrike rocket pods, trimmed down the front and got rid of the rockets, and reattached a machine gun onto the front of it. I trimmed down the gun quite considerably, as you can see here, and I'll just compare that with an untrimmed one so you can see just how much has come off the back, and super glued that to the front of the rocket pod. So I just wanted to show you what I did for the other variant. Very simple, no finesse, and you could do something a bit more refined, of course, but you know me and you know Mad Dot Minis, so that wasn't going to happen. Now for the finishing touch, I decided to cover up the hole where the third crew member would go normally with a standard Space Marine hatch from the vehicle accessory sprue. Now, if you've enjoyed the content, guys, please do consider liking and sharing. It really does help my channel to grow and develop, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that. If you are not already subscribed, please do consider giving us a sub. There's plenty more content on the way, and I always welcome the support. Now, I'm going to put my homebrew chapter colours down on these speeders, and I'm going to give you some glamour shots and put them on a rotating platform so you can have a proper look. Do let me know what you think. And until the next video, guys, please do take care. Cheers.